While I was in South Africa, my eyes were really opened to the way that different people live. You know, as Americans, we kind of have this understanding and this thought process, I would suppose, that we want to go on a mission trip and we want to fix people. We're going to come in there with our money, and we're going to come in there with all of our education and our knowledge, and we're just going to make things right wherever you are, whoever you are with your problems. But you know, that isn't really Christ-like. That's not the way that things really work. So the Mission of Peace was started in the 80s by a group of youth who looked at the way that we do mission work, and they said, you know, this doesn't really fit with what we think God wants in our lives and what God wants in our mission work. So the bishop of their conference challenged them to come up with a new method. So we established the Mission of Peace, which is a mission of being, not a mission of doing. And it goes under the understanding that we go to different places and we learn about their cultures and we build bridges of understanding and peace. So I went to South Africa for 3 weeks. I went around to different missions. Most of them were United Methodist, some of them weren't. And I learned about what are the issues in South Africa. What do these people live like on a daily basis? How is God working in their lives? How can I benefit from learning about them? And how can God work in my life because of that? One of the most memorable moments for me was visiting a church called Central Methodist Church, which is right downtown in Johannesburg. And this used to be the most beautiful church in all of South Africa. It's huge. Their sanctuary seats 1,500 people. And there's beautiful stained glass, and it was their pride and joy of the Methodist Church in South Africa. But they realized somewhere along the way during the apartheid state that they weren't doing things right. And they were a predominantly white congregation in a predominantly white neighborhood. And they said, you know, we don't feel like this is God's calling for us. So their ministers started preaching anti-apartheid from the pulpit, and they had a lot of problems. I met and heard a Methodist bishop in the church in South Africa who worked against apartheid, and one week he was preaching at Central Methodist Church, and the police raided their service. So the police came in with guns and riot gear, and they pointed a gun to his head and said, "You need to stop," and he refused to stop. The Mission of Peace of South Africa impacted me on such a deeper level because I've come home and now I'm energized to do more things in my community, because I understand now what God really wants me to do with my life and what God is already doing in other people's lives in other parts of the world. And you know, this whole experience really called into question for me, what should the church look like? Because it's not the beautiful buildings that we have, it's helping people. I've always known that I want to go into economics as my undergraduate degree, but I'm very much considering pursuing a PhD in development economics, so working with countries that we would consider to be kind of third world countries. How can you set up your society so that the most amount of people are helped? How can you solve these huge problems that affect so many people? I've changed in a big way and I've changed in little ways. And I think that it's very important for all of us to be grateful for what we have, because it's very easy in American society to look at your neighbor across the street and say, oh, that person has so much more than I do, because we just don't see the people who have so much less than all of us. We don't have them right next door as a comparison. So it's very important for people like us who come from a beautiful area to seek out those who have less.